Hello, welcome to another Coffee Club. I am Bill Leckie, and this week, with Robert Grieve being over in Bilbao, we are joined by the one and only David Friel.
I'm thinking I'm a kind of Oscar Cortez, Mike Navratsky here. You sometimes see me every couple of months, and then I dip back out again.
And then we're going to take you off at half time.
Hopefully not.
Lovely to see you.
You too, Bill.
We'll talk about the Rangers game in a moment. First of all, just before we come on, we were talking about Aston Villa last night. I mean, we had Rory McIlroy on Sunday night, which was just the greatest bit of TV sport I think I've ever seen. Tell you what, Villa, there was a point last night where it was getting close, wasn't it?
PSG kind of extend the lead. You think to yourself that's game over, because I really do think they've got a chance of winning the whole competition. But then Villa at home, as we've seen so many times this season, really good. John McGinn, what a goal! Great to see a Scottish player on that stage playing like that as well. But
good goal we felt, wasn't it?
Absolutely brilliant. But PSG hold on, as you say, a bit of drama on Sunday night. It was unbelievable with Rory McIlroy. It was like, it kind of reminded me of watching Argentina win the World Cup. He just wanted Messi to do it. The neutrals out there was the same with Rory McIlroy, but he kind of kept the heart rate up. But good. Been a good couple of days of sport, and let's hope there's some good sport to come for the rest of the week.
Well, that's the thing. But Rangers tomorrow night. Robert's over there. He'll be covering the press conference later today with Bilbao, and with Rangers, I'm presuming Barry Ferguson will be joined, I'm presuming, by James Tavernier to talk about the game. I think it's the biggest game that any Scottish club side has played this season. Is it, maybe an odd question considering the enormity of the situation, is it a free punch for Rangers?
To a point, I think it is, because I think Rangers, see right now, Bill, Rangers would take penalty kicks. Rangers would take another draw penalty kicks. I'm not sure Bilbao would. And I think all the pressure is on them. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to rise to the occasion, especially at home. Again, we were talking, they've won every single home game in Europe this season. I think they've only been beaten once in La Liga, that was Athletic Madrid, which there's no disgrace in that. I just feel Rangers thrive when the pressure's not on them. They thrive when they're underdogs. They've got I think Barry Ferguson's kind of settled on a way to play away from home, a kind of identical way to play. I think he'll do the same again. And to me, look, if Rangers go out at this stage, I think everybody will probably say they did well.
That's the point I made about the free punches, that nobody expects them now to win. And, you know, everybody knows their season's finished if they go out, but to go out the quarterfinals of the Europa League would be, after the season they've had, would be remarkable, wouldn't it? I mean, Robert and I have talked so often this season about how bad are Rangers in the league, but they're playing in Thursday night Europa League, and it wouldn't surprise you whatever they did. Then nothing surprised you. And last Thursday night, going down to 10 men after 12 minutes and playing the way they did was remarkable.
And see, listen, see when this draw was made, I think most of us probably thought it's a step too far, Bilbao, good team. See when Robin Propper gets sent off, everybody thinks it's a step too far. But it was just, I was quite underwhelmed by Bilbao.
So was that a great middle third?
Yeah, but they were so blunt, and actually, kind of after it wasn't. I kind of looked at the top scorers. The top goal scorers, Sanset, with 14 goals this season. You know, obviously they're relying on Williams Spurs. They don't have that out and out striker. I thought if they had a number 9 against Rangers in the first leg, I think it probably would have been different. But they don't.
It's really weird. The style down the decades, even of Bilbao, has been to have a British style big centre forward, as they had again the other night, and it was a bit battering Rami. And it was only when they brought the wee fella on who scored the goal to disallow and then he missed the penalty. But he got in about feet and he started to make things happen. But neither of them really impacted the game last week.
No, again, that's what I'm saying. You watch Nico Williams playing for Spain, he's been outstanding. I just felt as if Bilbao were almost playing within themselves. It was almost like they didn't want to go too gung-ho, even though Rangers had the man down, because I think it's not the worst result in the world for them. I think drawing it
0-0 away from home.
It's a good result. It just, to me, piles a bit more pressure on them.
Well, especially with the fact that they're already under this huge pressure that the final is in their stadium.
Can that work both ways? Can that be a hindrance and a help in the sense they're inspired to get there, but they're also playing under massive pressure? Because
I think in August,
final tickets have been released and everything.
I think in August, when they start out, it's a great boost to them. Oh, what the road to our stadium. Now you get to the second leg of a quarter final against a team who have been so unpredictable and have done so well away from home. I think the pressure is massively on Bilbao. Now they could go out and be 2-3 up. You never know. I mean, look at Rangers. You just don't know what you're going to get. And I think you have to discount completely now league form when it comes to Europe. They just do their own thing in Europe, don't they?
I think even Barry Ferguson's almost discounting league form, because
you saw that from his team on Sunday.
His team on Sunday, and
what did you think when you saw that team?
I thought it's just a sign of where Rangers are and where their priorities
Let
are.
the league go.
Look, Barry Ferguson can never come out and say, and I don't think he has actually conceded the title, right? But
no,
everybody knows the title's over, so he as a manager had a decision to make in terms of, does he protect as many players as he possibly can for what is a huge game in the context of any season, or does he just kind of for show just put out his strongest team? I think he probably made the right decision.
Also, I tell you what it's done for anybody who's coming in, whether it's the new manager or the new coaching staff or the new owners, they've now seen that what is in the background for Rangers is not good enough. I actually thought there was 3 or 4 players in that team who you could have taken off after 10 minutes because they looked as if it was like, oh, I've got to play today, have I?
I know, because that's again, you know, it's almost like this is a B team, this is a reserve team. But I think that's the wrong mindset to have. If you are a Danilo or a Nadim Barami or whoever it is, you have to go out there and show, this is my chance to go and stake a claim. And listen, I'll come on to one guy who started at the weekend, and I think he should start on Thursday. And this might divide opinion. I'd start Agamani. I genuinely would. I'd start him before Dessers.
I would start him before Dessers any day of the week. I've got to say, I think especially away from home where you're living off scraps, that goal he scored at the start of the second half is typical. It was very, in a way it was quite similar to his goal at Parkhead, the winning goal where it comes down and it bobbles and he manages to get it under control, and he's got very good close control around about defenders who are sort of backing off, and he's a great finisher. Yeah,
exactly. And I think Rangers on Thursday night are going to need a striker who can take the ball for a walk. They're going to need a striker who can get them on the pitch.
And that's not Dessers.
That's not Dessers. And actually, you know, look, I've said a million times, I think Dessers is much maligned. You can't help but like the guy. He does score goals. However, in a game like this, you need someone to look after the ball up front. And I actually felt in the first leg, especially when he was down to 10 men, he just didn't protect the ball.
No,
the amount of slack passes, the amount of wee daft touches, and you think
he's also not aware of movement round about him, is he? You know, like if he's back, I watched him a couple of times in the first half when they were under a bit of pressure, and he's back in his own half, and Barry Ferguson screaming at him to follow runners and close down space, and he's just not very spatially aware.
Yeah, and that's where I think Agamani, again, when he did come on in the first leg, and Rangers are, you know, down to 9 men at that stage, and it's just protect the ball, keep the ball. He did it. He is elusive. He can drop a shoulder. He can somehow come out with the ball. I think that's going to be really important. Look, I think Dessers is sometimes better off the bench as well. A point to prove. To me, I would start Agamani. That feeds into what we're talking about. That Aberdeen team. It wasn't. Don't see that as a slight. See that as your chance to go and stake a claim, because with red cards, with injuries, whatever.
And also, you don't know who. I mean, it might well be. We've talked again. Robert and I've talked a lot about the amount of players in that Rangers dressing room who are going to be saying, "Well, I'm out of here at the end of the season. It doesn't matter to me." But you don't know who's watching.
Exactly.
You don't know what scouts or managers or agents or whoever it is watching you having an absolute blinder on a Sunday lunchtime and go, a minute, we might get him for buttons, you know.
Does the keeper stay? Do you keep the keeper?
I'm not sure how or what it takes now, unless Liam Kelly was to get injured. What would bring Jack Butland back now? Because Kelly's done really well, and the first leg he was even without the penalty save, he had 2 tremendous stops in the first half, and he just looked very assured, very confident in a way that unfortunately Jack Butland hasn't for a long time. Again, he had no chance with the 2 Aberdeen goals on Sunday, but I can't see how he doesn't play.
I mean, does he play Ridvan Yilmaz at right wing back and Jeffrey on the other side? Is that what he does? Does he put in Clinton and Ciala?
I was going to say,
would be a tough one.
Defensively, they have issues.
Yeah.
You know, Suter comes back, it's good. You're guessing Tavernier will probably play the centre half.
Balogun
will play. So that would probably be not in Ciala. I don't think at that level it's in Ciala. So Tavernier, Suter, Balogun has done the job before. Wing back wise, I think your wing backs are going to be looking to defend a lot more than they're going to look to get forward. So I don't think Jeffrey's a particularly great defender, but I don't really see what other options they have. Yilmaz has switched across to the right before. You'd rather see him at the left, but then they don't really have.
No, they don't have any option. Right. And also, if Nico Williams is playing out there and cutting in, sometimes Celtics have a left. They're playing there, and then it looks as if it's going to be obviously Raskin, Diamandi, Cherny if fit, a striker, and then there's one more. Do you go Barron, or do you go Hadji, or Barami, or somebody like that?
I would be tempted.
It's tricky.
It depends whether you want to set up to defend and break, or in which case it's probably Barron. But if you think you've got a chance of getting at them, it's probably Hadji. I would think Barron probably is further up the rank than Rice is. So yeah, you'd maybe look at Barron starting, and then Hadji if they need somebody to come on and change things. I mean,
this is the thing, as we spoke about with injuries and with just the guys who didn't do themselves justice. He's got a very small pool here to work for.
Certainly got a small
Ferguson.
pool that he can trust.
Yeah,
that's the big thing with Barry, isn't it? Who's on my side? Who do I trust? And I think that pool's getting smaller every week.
No, it is, and this is a very specific type of performance Rangers need here. And as I said, there's so much evidence. This is the kind of game Rangers thrive on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, this is going to be the toughest of them all. And to be fair, Barry Ferguson did say that. He was asked about winning in Nice and playing well at Old Trafford and winning drawing in Olympiacos, and he said, look, this is the toughest of them all.
Absolutely.
However, I would never ever write off Rangers now.
No, not in Europe you wouldn't. No. I mean, you wouldn't put a penny on Rangers if they're at home to Dundee, and Dundee had five or six injuries. You still wouldn't be sure they would go over the line. But then they can go to a place like Bilbao, and then maybe in the semi-final, if they got through, if somehow they get through tomorrow night, it's either Lyon or Manchester United. You would say, well, why not? So, and it's going to be exciting. And Robert Graves out there. You can read all Robert's press conference, pre-match stuff online and in print. All the best coverage. He's the best in the business when he does these things. And I know he watches, so that's why I'm saying that, because he thinks we're abusive to him when he's not here sometimes. But no, yes, Robert is. I love when he does his stuff abroad. He gets where he is. He gets what he's doing, and you'll get the best coverage from Robert online and in print, and also at the game tomorrow night. So good luck to Rangers for that one. We then come into Scottish Cup semi-final weekend. A little hiatus before we're back into the post-split league situation. We'll do the second one first. Celtic St Johnstone on Sunday.
Yep.
You would think people would say it's a foregone conclusion, but the other week Celtic probably thought that and lost to St Johnstone. Is it a different game in the semi?
Yeah, a totally different game. I think, to be honest with you, I think even Simo Valakari will know. I almost think, and I know he said the other day, beating Celtic doesn't make it tougher this time. I think it does make it tougher that time, because I think Celtic will be going out with a massive point to prove. They're chasing a treble. The wide open spaces are Hampden. I think it'll be a long afternoon for St Johnstone. I just don't see Celtic slipping up again. They do need the game to be quite narrow. St Johnstone into what they did at McDermott Park. I thought he did absolutely brilliantly. He set up his team really well. The delivery for the goal was tremendous. And then from then on, their management of the game, and it wasn't just defensive. No.
I mean, they got forward when they could, but their management of the next 87 minutes or whatever it was tremendous, and Celtic were right off it. I would think Brendan Rodgers will be lighting a great big fire under their feet for this after what happened at McDermott Park.
100%. I don't think he's ever lost a game at Hampden. Celtic, as I said, they're chasing a treble. I just don't see them. Callum McGregor, I think, you're talking about Brendan Rodgers lighting a fire. I think Callum McGregor, guys like that, will be reminding the players. You saw the performance of the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes against Kilmarnock. I think at that stage, Derek McInnes is probably fearing 8-9. Celtic looks as if they could score every time they go forward. The pitch will suit them. I just think it'll be a long afternoon.
You think he'll play James Forrest?
I would. I think he would.
Apart from the fact that it's Hampden and it's James Forrest and
he always scores against St Johnstone.
He always scores against St Johnstone.
To me, he is a player who you can just hang your hat on. You know what you're going to get from him. He looks after the ball. He's clever, and you even saw on Saturday just some of the way his passing, his movement, his intelligence. He's just a boy who, if you watch when he first came in, he was very direct, quick as a winger. He's now kind of just moulded into this sort of complete footballer. He just knows his way.
Well, he knows it because of injuries, whatever else. He can't do. He can't go past fullbacks the same. He's not going to play 90 minutes for Celtic very often. But I wouldn't be surprised if he played it and just put a wee rocket up either.
Yeah. Kuhn or Jota. He's obviously, Brendan Rodgers put Adam Idah in. Don't think he did his best game. Dyson Maida, you would imagine, probably plays through the middle. I think James Forrest is, again, for the second of the last 3 seasons, is going to play a really prominent role in the run-in for Celtic, because I just think he's been over the course before. He knows what to do.
Do you know, you mentioned Adam Idah. A game like this against St Johnstone at Hampden should be the kind of game he should be absolutely pawing the ground to play in, and yet they're just saying, well, probably not. It's probably 2 wide men and Maida through the middle. The disappointment for the amount of money Celtic have paid in Adam Idah is palpable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably kind of quite torn on this, and I think any number 9, especially, you know, a guy who paid that money, you want a run of games. I don't think he's ever really had a run of games, but then you also need to see when you get your chances, like against Kilmarnock, you need to take it. You know, and he did just after Kyogo left, come into the team, scored the 2 goals at Villa. I think he scored 3 or 4 goals in a few games, and you think at that stage, maybe dropped off a wee bit. Idah goes through the middle, doesn't miss a beat. And you now look at it and you think Celtic's best number 9 by a mile.
It's Idah.
It's Idah.
Absolutely.
You are looking at big games, semi-finals, finals right now. Adam Idah doesn't start for Celtic.
No, not at all. And that must be. It's a dilemma going forward for Celtic, but it must be a really painful one for Adam Idah after what he did in the cup final last year, and then he signs the big deal, the permanent contract, and you think he's going to kick on, but he really hasn't. No, he's not kicked on. I mean, his record, he'll probably finish the season with 15-16 goals, which in the grand scheme of things is fine. I just don't feel he's ever really established himself in a team. Can you... Okay, Celtic have a lot of money kicking about, but can you keep a £9 million or whatever it was striker on the bench for most of the season, or do you have to cut your losses and move on? No, because I think I do think Celtic overpaid for him, but see if you want to get that sort of profile, an international striker from the English Championship who's been up here and done quite well, you're probably paying £5 or £6 million. So I think Celtic are just going to, you know, I'm not convinced. It wouldn't surprise me if Celtic brought in almost like a project number 9 in the summer, as opposed to a £50 million striker. One of your big Scandinavian lads that we're looking at. I think it wouldn't surprise me, but I think Brendan Rodgers, I think Adam Idah himself will know that, come back, get a pre-season and really just start to hit the ground running. Well, he has to. That has to be his season. Yeah, it has to be. But it's not going to be easy if you get Dyson Maeda staying instead of scoring goals. For St Johnstone, they lost on Saturday at Tannadice, which was a blow to them. Avoiding relegation is obviously their number 1 priority. Again, we talked about Rangers. What do they try and do? They can't look at it and say it's a free punch the way we're talking about Rangers, because they don't want to go there and get battered. But how would you balance that if you're seeing Valakari? I would probably try and have a go. I think if St Johnstone try and just sit in and hope for the best, I think the Celtic are going to score, right? So I think he's got the players and the legs. And when we speak about the pitch in Celtic, but it surely suits like Sidibe, to run in, Mackenzie Kirk, guys like that. Kim Pioka, who's kind of come back in the last couple of weeks. You know, surely it suits them as well. So to me, St Johnstone should, I think, just have a go. I don't really see what else they've got to lose. Well, I think certainly Celtic in the early stages of a lot of games have been quite vulnerable, as they were at McDermott Park, and maybe that's the best, St Johnstone's best chance. Can you get yourself in the lead there? Can you get the first goal? Yeah, I'm not talking about going a 4-2-4 for me. I'm just talking about can you get Celtic turned? You know, can you get Scales? Probably going to be Scales and Carter Vickers, Alistair Johnston. If it's Greg Taylor, can you get them pinned back as opposed to just letting Celtic get on the ball? And I think St Johnstone have the legs up front. That is the one thing about Simo Valakari as well. He does tend to play attackers. You know, he doesn't just. You know, he's not a manager. He's not a 4-5-1. No, he's not a 4-5-1. He's not the most conservative manager. And I think at times you look at it and you think he probably could be a wee bit more conservative in certain games. But I think at Hampden, I'm not saying leave yourself wide open, but go and try and pose a threat. Last little mention in this game, you mentioned there in passing Greg Taylor. Now, he was there on Saturday with the kids, the little one with the Celtic top on, and Brendan Rodgers says, I'm still trying to keep Greg Taylor. It has seemed for all the world all season as if he's off. And now the narrative is a wee bit different. I mean, is that just talk? My gut feeling is that Greg Taylor probably still will leave. I do think he will, and there's been loads of talk over this, and you know, should he stay, he's going to be, for all intents and purposes, from the outside looking in, the backup to Kieran Tierney. Should he stay? Is he lacking ambition if he moves on? Is he lacking ambition if he stays? I think Greg Taylor has provided fantastic service to Celtic, and if he does decide to go, then I think he should go with everyone's blessing. For me, he's a guy who, you look at his close friends, for example, Ryan Christie, Christopher Ayer, guys like that, who've gone down south, Stuart Armstrong, have gone down south and blossomed and flourished. He's done everything he possibly can at Celtic. Maybe he just wants a different life experience. Maybe he just wants a different environment. He's married last year, they've got a small child. Maybe this is the time to go and find a new life. And I think everybody's always... Where can you see him?
I could probably see him going to. I would actually. I mean, I remember you're talking about this. This has been going on for months. I remember me and Robert sitting here talking about this. It feels like about 5 months ago. I could see him abroad if the right move, but I could also see him going to. I think Ryan Christie took a step back to Bournemouth to then won promotion. I could see him at a top end championship club. I don't think Greg is going to go and get a Premier League club in England. I just don't think, just in terms of the stature and everything like that. But I think he's going to be well in demand. Look, he's a guy who's played for Scotland, played Champions League football, won a lot of trophies. Look, I also don't think it's a worst idea for him to stay at Celtic in the sense that he'll play a lot of games. Kieran Tierney could play centre half. Brendan Rodgers is on record saying that whoever is that kind of almost other left back, for want of a better word, will play a lot of games. But see if he does just decide I want something different, can you really blame him?
No, not in the least. Listen, I would never blame any player who, far too old now to think that people should just stay where they are because they play for the jersey. You're just married, you've got a child, you think, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? I'm whatever it is, 28, whatever it is. Say, what do you want to do, darling? Oh, I fancy going and living in Los Angeles. Right, let's see if we can go there, or Miami, or Toronto, or Nice, or wherever it is. And why not? Because 999 out of 1,000 people will never get the choice of going to do their job somewhere exotic or somewhere exciting.
Neil Critchley's got more than enough time to turn the season around.
Yeah, it's been in October.
It's not like, it was quite interesting. I was at St Mirren on Saturday and speaking to Stephen Robinson after the game, and it was fascinating when the way he was talking, and he wasn't having a dig at Hearts, but what he was saying is this happens to St Mirren in a season, by the way, when St Mirren's form's been up and down, and we'll have a lot of stuff off the park that's been difficult to deal with. This happens when the established big clubs kind of don't do their job properly, and I would class Hearts in that. I think Hearts haven't won enough big games, haven't scored enough goals. There's too many players who have been signed with big reputations haven't delivered, and I think there's huge pressure on the players, the club, and especially the manager. Absolutely. Well, the argument from the fans is that Critchley hasn't won a big game, and he hasn't. He hasn't taken anything off Rangers or Celtic. He's got 1 point out of 9 against Hibs. He's got 1 point out of 6 against Aberdeen. That's not a good record. But going into the last 3 games for the split, where all they've really got to do is stand on their feet. That's what I mean. They lose to Celtic. Okay, they lose to Celtic, and they can lose to Celtic. I was there a week back on Sunday against Dundee United when they went down to 10 men in the first half, which again can happen to anybody. But they didn't look at it, even before then, as if this was a game that they were going to sweat bullets for. And Dundee United beat them, and I'm not going to say beat them comfortably, but Dundee United never looked panicked. No, I know. And their performance in being so far clear in fifth now, basically putting the sixth place team out of any chance of Europe. Jim Goodwin and his players have been absolutely fantastic, and Hearts should be looking at that more than anything else. They should be looking at what Hibs have done, because when Hearts got the last minute equaliser against Hibs right at the start of Critchley's time, they put Hibs bottom of the league. They jumped off the bottom, they put Hibs bottom. And everybody thought, well, Hearts are going to start moving. But look at Hibs. I mean, I watched on TV on Sunday afternoon the game against Dundee. They were tremendous again. Just moving the ball and entertaining and attacking, and everything about them's positive. And everything I feel about Hearts is very insular and very negative just now. What surprises me is, and look, I don't see Hearts every week, but I watch a fair bit of them. I don't see an identity. I don't see how they play. You can watch the bulk of the teams, I think, in the Scottish Premiership. Hibs are a prime example. You know how they play. David Gray has settled on this formation. He's settled on a way of playing. And you say that's what they do. I watch Hearts and I just think, who's playing? There's not enough pace. There's, positions seem to change. What he's trying to do with Lawrence Shankland, I just don't get. Look, Lawrence Shankland is clearly going to leave Hearts, right? But he's still your best bet to go. But again, as we've said on here before, where's he going to go now? I know. When he goes from 31 goals last season to 4 goals this season, where's he going to go? Where the minus 27 goals get you? No, at this stage of his career. But I do think there's two strands to this. I think Lawrence Shankland will be the first to admit he could have played better. But I also don't get this number 10 thing, the Harry Kane role, and also that you come the Fir Park game, you're 0-0 at half time, and you say, Lawrence, any chance of digging us out a hole here? Aye, absolutely. I mean, to me, which you should have done. In the last minutes. And that's what I'm saying. It's a kind of two strands thing. I think he's been mismanaged in a way. But I also think he could be doing better. But I think overall, you know, Hearts have a huge budget. They've got the investment from Jamestown. They did sign in January. They brought guys in. They signed a lot last summer. You remember Jan Dander, Bill Spittle, all these guys coming in.
Penrice has been the one big success.
Penrice has been brilliant. Penrice has been outstanding.
They've got players like Barry Mackay sitting there who's nowhere near anything on
good money.
A lot of money. A lot more money than any St Mirren players on, right? Probably more money than any Dundee United players on. Not getting anywhere near it. And you think, how do you come to this? And there's the thing. I wrote my column about this on Monday, and they could get rid of Neil Critchley tomorrow, right? You know, it's so similar to last season with Hibs. Hibs with Nick Montgomery went to Motherwell on the last day before the split. They lost a goal in the last minute that put them out of the top 6. Then they get battered by Aberdeen. Then he gets emptied. You could see something very sliding doors similar happening with Neil Critchley. But does it really change anything if they get rid of Critchley with the decisions that board have made over the last 5-6 managers? Does it really change anything?
No, probably not. And this is where I think it's fascinating going forward from Hearts, in a sense of, you've got Jamestown Analytics, and that comes all bells and whistles, and they'll identify that these are the players, and the manager's then meant to feed into that. But Neil Critchley, I think we were all probably a bit surprised.
He's a youth coach. He's a very, very good youth coach.
And he did okay at Blackpool, I think, and he had a couple of spells.
He did in his first spell, not in his
first spell. And then it was QPR in between that, and you think to yourself, right, this is a bit kind of left field to me when he got the job. But it was very much, well, he will fit into the style of what Hearts want. They've also brought in Graham Jones from the SFA as well to kind of oversee things. But it's not worked. It's just not worked yet.
But they keep going left field. You know, they made Ian Cathro the first laptop manager. Daniel Stendhal. They brought both Craig Levein and Robbie Nielsen back for second spells, which people kind of saying, well, why would you go back? You know, they appointed Stephen Naismith, who had never managed, and you throw him straight in to the top level of Scottish football. Everything they do seems to be an experiment. Yeah,
and that's what I mean in terms of, we've also got all this analytics stuff going on in the background, so who decides the manager, and is it a manager that's just going to be coming in
to take the players that he's given?
These are the players, this is how we want to play as a club, and this is how we want to operate as a club. You're going to fit into our style, there you go. I don't want it to sound like it has to be a sort of Stephen Robinson style, he's the manager, he runs everything, who's in charge. But I'm just not sure. And the next if Neil Critchley has a lot to do in the short term to show he's a guy for the long term, and if he doesn't, I would fear for him. And then beyond that, you think to yourself, well, who comes in and what kind of role, what kind of model do they follow in terms of coach? But I think he's under huge pressure come Saturday.
I think so too. And they play an Aberdeen team who should have been coming into this game on a real high, because they're 2-0 up against a 10-man Rangers team at half time. And then
what kind of role, what kind of model do they follow in terms of coach? But I think he's under huge pressure come Saturday.
I think so too. And they play an Aberdeen team who should have been coming into this game on a real high, because they're 2-0 up against a 10-man Rangers team at half time. And then, and pretty much in a microcosm of their season, they went from being tremendous in the first half to absolutely dreadful in the second half, and end up shipping an equaliser right at the end, and with another 2 or 3 minutes of stoppage time, might have lost the game. How do you begin to explain what they're like?
They've just been so up and down. I do wonder as well, watching the game and watching it all unfold, did he overthink his subs?
Oh, his subs, I thought his subs
did he
were
overthink it in a sense that... No, but you know what I mean? It felt as if the best thing to do was stretch the game. And I just don't know if he brought on...
Well, that's underthinking then, because I think the absolute room 101 thing is you go, well, Shade Morris out there and Keskinen out there are stretching them. Shinnie's playing really well. Shinnie's digging about the place. But, you know, this is good against 10 men. Keep them moving, and then he takes off the pace and the width and plays 3 centre forwards, and it all gets a bit crowded and muddled. And okay, they're very unlucky with the goal that's disallowed to make it 3-1. These are the little moments that turn things. But I suppose it is a handball. It bounces up and hits his hand. It's one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it was. As soon as you saw the first replay, you think to yourself, well, it doesn't really matter if he means it or not.
But it should never been. I mean, they should have been 4-0 before half time. But to then come back and do that, they now come into this game under a huge amount of pressure, because if they were to lose to Hearts with the state the Hearts are in, then suddenly this Jimmy Tillene season doesn't look half as good as it could have been.
Because it looks as if you have, I mean, Hibs going to finish third.
I think if they beat Aberdeen in the first of the, I think it's the first game after the split, isn't it?
I think so. I think he's done. It's a weird one. It's been such a roller coaster season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like Sunday was such a roller coaster game for Aberdeen, but it's kind of almost like just seems a wee kind of this season in a microcosm. So much they like, but then you think, where did that come from? That collapse.
Yeah.
But I do think Aberdeen kind of pride themselves in cups, and I don't think they've delivered anywhere near as much as they should have over a long time.
No.
Scottish Cup will be a chance. Look, it's probably going to be Celtic in the final, so whoever goes through are going to be underdogs. But to me, again, this is a chance for Jimmy Tillane to really show we've made progress.
Yeah.
We're going somewhere.
Right, that's the question though. You think Celtic are going to the final?
I think Celtic
Hearts or Aberdeen?
Aberdeen.
Do you know, I've got a sneaky feeling Hearts might just do it.
Do you?
Aye.
Lawrence Shankland winner?
I think they would take anybody's winner off any part of the anatomy. Last question, are Rangers going to make it?
No. I think Bilbao just too tough.
I think you might be right. However, let's just say as a little disclaimer before I say like, subscribed. I am going to say as a little disclaimer, we have never got one right with Rangers in Europe this season so far. So why should we start now? Good luck to Rangers. Good luck to everybody in the semi-finals. We will see you again next week. Like, subscribe, and enjoy, and read all the best stuff online and in paper in the Scottish Sun. Bye bye.